Watcher. I've now gone back into sensible shirt, well, say sensible shirt mode, but, non-bear onesie mode, because the next session is actually an interesting one, I think, for me. Those of you who came here last year, who did come to Marketed Live last year? You're amazing. I love you. Is everyone coming back next year? Okay, all right. Oh, come on, we're over that. EE is sponsoring it and providing us with, connections. Anyway, so we thought we would actually ask some of the speakers back from last year to today to just talk about some of the changes that they've seen in their area in the last 12 months. As I said at the beginning, change is really swift and lots can happen in 12 months, certainly. So I've got a few questions to ask these guys. I'm going to get them to introduce themselves in a moment to you if you don't know who they are already. And then we've got space for questions from you guys if you have any particular questions you want to ask. Mac has got the mic and he will run around with that. And I will probably pick people at other ends of the room just to kind of get him running, just because. Okay, so it's a real privilege to have you guys here again. Thank you for returning to Marketed Live. You all did such an amazing job last year, and you all talked about different things, but you're all in marketing. So Lillian, perhaps we can start with you. Could you introduce yourself, what you do, and maybe what you spoke about last year?
Hello. I have to press it.
Don't know.
Hello. It's because they think I'm going to sing. They just want to ensure
It's
that
the
they
Westlife
mute the
stalls.
Hello, I'm Lillian Betty, and I'm Head of Strategic Partnerships at TI Media, which is formerly Time Inc. And last year I talked about the power of influencers and influencer marketing.
Hello, I'm Victoria Taylor, and I am a customer experience and digital strategist. And yeah, that's it. That's me.
Hello, we are Andrew and Pete, and we help small businesses predominantly be more creative with their content marketing. Last year we talked about algorithms, which isn't the most fun topic, but we talked about it in terms of how do you create content that actually performs well in the algorithms.
I'm the other half of Andrew and Pete.
If you hadn't guessed. Okay, so different topics that you covered. Lillian, we'll start with you. I just wondered if anything's really crucially changed. Obviously, the name seems to have changed. But in terms of influencer marketing, certainly I hear a lot more about it from not just big companies that can afford to do it, but smaller companies that are looking to reach out to influencers. It is a big thing. What's changed between last year and now? Where are we with influencer marketing?
So I think last year I predicted that I think it was 2018 was going to be the year of the influencer, as well as 2017 and probably 2019. So I think it has now become commonplace, so I think it sits firmly in most businesses' strategies. The difference is that there was a rush by some of the larger companies to invest in the big influencers without a real understanding of what ROI looked like. I think this year we're now seeing that change slightly, so businesses are interested in working with influencers that might be smaller, so micro-influencers they're called, and it seems that they deliver better engagement, better brand values, and so the change for me, I think, is that the bigger influencers, the big names, aren't as useful to businesses as we thought they would be. Do you want me to talk about looking forward?
Is that because we sort of see through it as consumers and therefore it's not as effective?
I think so. I think there are a number of things. They there wasn't any regulation. So initially, you couldn't really tell what was promoted, what wasn't. So that's starting to happen with the IAB and the A. That's good news. But also, I think consumers are really savvy, so they understand when they're being sold to, and it became less and less subtle. And I know that everyone's talking about the poor girl who was doing the Listerine
Right.
campaign recently. I think that really exposed influencers in a way that we all knew that a lot of it isn't real, it isn't genuine, and there's less authenticity than we thought there was. And those big names have really moved on. So people like Zoe Suggs and her brother are now TV stars and are media businesses within their own right. And what is left behind are people that are struggling to find their roots. So are they creating action, so telling people to go and do things, buy things, or are they creating content? And my belief is that the content creators will survive. Influencers will be smaller, but better engaged, and they will have a more significant partnership with the brands they work with. So there'll be a genuine relationship moving forward. The last thing I'd say is there was no ROI. There was no real understanding of what influencers were delivering to the industry. So big money was being spent, and then brands started to look back and try and work out what they were getting for their investment. I think that the industry will now start to regulate itself, and you will start to see the pressure on influencers and what value they deliver and what that looks like in terms of whether it's engagement or whether it's eyeballs.
So it needs to become more professional, really.
Absolutely. But the good news is people that are good, I think the lady that was talking about podcasts, it's important that you have a point of difference, that you are authentic, and you're creating great content that resonates with your audience, and that works well for businesses. So from a B2B perspective, an influencer homegrown from your own business or from your network is probably more valuable than someone taking a picture of a bottle of mouthwash.
So does that mean that, so just expand on that point a bit. So when we're talking about internal influencers, what are we talking about? Are we talking about employees?
I would say cultivate people within your business that have a good sense of creating great content, that have a point of view, that have strong opinions but aren't polarizing, great representatives of your business that you feel confident will be able to show you in the best light, and support them, help them develop a dialogue and a narrative that puts your business out into into social networks and social media that are engaging your customers in a different way. And I think the podcast example is a great example that can be used for the influencer market.
Excellent. Thank you, Lillian. Victoria, if I may come to you, a lot of what Lillian's been talking about there is sort of almost internal experience marketing, or certainly employee advocacy fits into that. What's happened with experiences? Where are we now compared to where we were 12 months, with people being a bit more interested in offering the experience rather than the thing?
Yeah, I think experience is always going to be important, and it's only going to get more important. And I think it's something that people are focusing on more now, because we are living among such noisy news feeds and such a noisy space, that it isn't just about starting with a piece of content and creating a piece of content to say, well, look at my brand, look at my business. It's about, well, how do we go even further back than that? And what do we cultivate as a business to make people not just think about us for digital, to make us be on their minds constantly? So how do we do that? Say a physical establishment, if someone walks into our premises, how do we make them feel at that moment? How do we make them feel at the next moment? And then how do we translate that digitally? So I would always say that experience should come first, and you can tell the companies that put experience first above the companies that just start with digital, because it's like permeated through everything that they do. And I think it is becoming more and more and more relevant for everybody to be looking at that now, because it's so noisy and it's just busier and busier.
What did you make of Ross's talk about? He was talking about those websites that offer sound and multi-sensory things.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and I think that Yeah, it was. I think Ross is always brilliant, and everybody is going to have a different experience with a particular thing that they're interacting with. So my experience of that website could be completely different to your experience of that website. But for the ideal customer of that particular website user, that could be absolutely the right experience for them. So I think to think to that level and to be able to create something to that level is amazing, because it's a completely different experience for someone to have. So.
Well, you've got a big business. Obviously, that's quite easy to achieve because you just throw money at it.
Yeah.
But oops, I turned it off. But what about smaller businesses that just don't have that kind of money? Is it possible to are there any tips in terms of taking a smaller budget and still delivering an experience that people will understand this is what they're going to get?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we did it last year with Colic, and, similar to what Tim was saying from Fanbytes, thinking about context. At the time when I worked with the campaign last year, and it was coinciding with the time of Harry Potter, when everything was so big around Harry Potter last year, and it really did massively help that campaign, because it was in the context of the talk that was happening at that time, and the budget was tiny, really tiny in terms of there was hardly any paid promotion on it at all on Facebook. They put some into email marketing, but it went global. It got global press. It got custom from all over the world. They had to extend the campaign. They had to introduce different parts of the campaign. So you can certainly do it on a small budget. It's just thinking differently and thinking about how do we do that. We even send out like feathers, and there was all kinds of things to create those magical, like the golden tickets, to create those little magical moments that weren't just digital. So people were going, oh my gosh, I've had this, look at this, look at it. It was something special.
And it's won an award, right?
It has won an award, yeah.
There you
has,
go.
yeah.
Andrew and Pete, just thinking about audiences, you do a lot of work with audiences. And I know that you didn't talk about audiences last time, but how much should we be thinking about the audience now compared to maybe before? Are there any differences?
I think it's more important than ever to think about how you're building an audience, and not just how content helps you sell more stuff to people that are ready to buy, but how you're building audiences of potential customers for when they are ready to buy. It's not a case of going and Googling. It's a case of you're the preferred choice because you've built that, we call it brand equity, over time with them. And that's where a lot of our efforts with content marketing is going, right?
Yeah. And I think the hard part is everyone's been doing this so well already that people have got these outstanding communities already. And if you want to now come in and build your own community, actually what you need to be thinking about is, how do I knock off someone else's community? Because if I
Not knock off, copy.
No. like if I'm already in an existing community, I've been in that community for years, I love that person, I love the content, I love the people in it, how are you actually gonna draw them away from that community to yours? Because that's the stage we're at now. Everyone is actually already a part of someone's audience. Mm-hmm. So you need to create something so magnetic that you have to draw people away from something they already love, which is actually incredibly hard.
Going back to the podcasting example, we wanted to launch our own marketing podcast, but how many blooming marketing podcasts are there with marketers interviewing marketers about marketing? And it's like, if we wanted to have a successful podcast, we had to not only have a podcast that people wanted to listen to, but when people are looking through the podcast app, it's not like they're making a thought, I am going to stop listening to Paul's podcast and listen to Andrew and Pete's. But that is actually what they have to do if we want them to listen to ours, because people don't have enough time to consume everything that they want to consume. So that's why we put a lot of thought to, how is our content different? How do we make sure if people have all of this choice, it's Andrew and Pete's that I want to listen to. And that's what we try to teach our members to do as well.
Have you used any different strategies this year compared to, for season 2 of your podcast compared to season 1? I don't mean in terms of the content, but in terms of getting people interested in watching it or listening to it.
We've done more with bots over the past 12 months, using bots as a delivery mechanism for content, but also using bots as a way to make sure that content performs in the first place. So for example, if we are doing a Facebook Live, we don't just go live on Facebook and say, hey, we're live on Facebook, ask us anything. We message our bot audience first. We say, hey, so we're doing one in a few weeks on sales. I think this one's gone out already, hasn't it? So we messaged our whole bot audience and said, we're doing a Facebook Live on sales. Do you have any questions that you're going to put to our sales expert that we're going to get on the show? So we've now got tons of questions. So the content is now primed, ready for that Facebook Live. So it saves us time in that case. But also people are showing up because they want to get the questions answered. You get that immediate engagement because people are ready for it. They're excited to get their questions answered. And it makes for better content.
So you're thinking about the audience, you're thinking about what they need, and you're delivering something that is efficient, right?
Yes.
Excellent. It's exactly what we want. There's your blueprint. Should we turn it into a 10-step program with an auto webinar? Maybe. Vicky, I want to come back to you. What things excite you about marketing lately?
Well, do you know what? The things that excite, I've looked a lot to other industries I'd say the past 12 months specifically, because actually marketing is, like you said, it's so saturated and it's the same messages day in, day out, day in, day out. So I'm actually learning a lot more from other industries, and the quieter I've become, the better my business is doing. So I think that those that have been a little bit more scarce, and I know that goes against the grain, but there are those that have been a little bit more scarce and maybe more meaningful, that are attracting me because it's different and it sticks with me because it's just not a flood of content.
And it's about coming outside of your bubble, outside of your
100%.
comfort zone, and seeing what's what, right?
100%. And I think we can be very insular in marketing and we'll go to a marketing podcast here or a marketing podcast there. Now, I've listened to everybody's podcasts here and they're brilliant, but I'll also listen to podcasts outside of my industry because marketers aren't my client. So what's the point in me constantly listening to marketers? That's what I do. I deal with experience, I deal with marketing. So I listen to other industries, I listen to sport, fashion, technology, different things, because those are my potential customers,
Yeah, so 100% agree with that. We call it follow the leaders of the medium, not your industry. If you're constantly looking at your industry for inspiration, you're always going to be that one step behind because you're always going to be trying to catch up to someone that's done it before. So our podcast was inspired by Greg James, BBC Radio 1's show. That's who we looked at when we wanted to launch a podcast. We didn't go and binge listen to a ton of marketing podcasts because we would just sound like every other marketing podcast. So yeah, 100% agree with that.
And I think they are becoming more and more you almost can't, if you didn't hear people's voices and you were just hearing in the same voice, you wouldn't know whose content was whose, because the lines have become that blurred. Everybody's talking about the same stuff, and it has this perpetuating effect where it's oh, well, I must do X, so I'm the same as X or better than X. Actually, it goes back to what Chris was saying this morning. It's so simple. Stop focusing on what other people in your industry are doing. Give a shit about your customers and other industries, because that is where people will innovate.
We're going to come to the floor in a minute, so if you've got any questions, get thinking, get ready. Lillian, you work with lots of different industries and sectors, so just based on that theme, are there any people that you really like or brands that are doing it well that maybe we should be looking at to get some kind of, influence?
Yeah, so one of the things I'm excited about, I think it's just me, no one else really cares, is Instagram TV. I'm just fascinated. I really want to see where it goes. And the reason I want to see where it goes is that although there are many reasons why ultimate control and power with one business is not a great thing for the rest of us, it's interesting to see how it will change the way YouTube operates. And there's something quite fascinating about having video served to you within your feed. So people are trying to make sense of how they adapt their marketing messages for that platform. So that's quite interesting. In terms of who I'm loving at the moment, I think that Spotify are fantastic. Their marketing is superb. They are really serving their core customers well and demonstrating, as we saw in the previous, I think it was Ross's presentation, that they really understand what their customers want, and then they give them more of it. And then they're creating communities around it. So I think that there's something really exciting about that. And then I've also noticed that brands with purpose. So I think I was talking to someone about the growth of PR businesses and marketing businesses that are looking at the purpose of a company and their corporate and social responsibility. And I think that the way a company behaves internally is going to be very much reflected on how people view them externally. So there are some really interesting businesses that are sort of putting their heart and ambition out as part of their marketing messages, which I think is quite an interesting route.
Excellent. Okay, have we got any questions? Anyone want to ask any of these guys anything? I can't really see. I don't know if we can change the lights a little bit. But feel free to ask a question. Yes, Debbie.
Okay. Yeah, do you know what? And it's actually less brand led and more person led for me, which is really interesting. It's like there are brands I love. Like if I could be a Disney princess, I would, right? I love Disney. I love what Disney are doing. Are Disney necessarily innovating? No, I don't think they are, because Disney are so amazing at what they do. They naturally do amazingly well. So it's like, could they innovate further? Yes, I think they could. However, I think we're seeing smaller content creators and smaller businesses innovating because they're pushing boundaries, and there are hundreds and hundreds of these people, and you find a lot of them on Instagram, and they're doing things differently, they're pushing boundaries, they give a damn, they care about how people feel about them, and I'm drawn more to them, I think. I guess there are brands that are, I guess I like travel brands because travel interests me. But a lot of I think, when you do get to that bigger scale and you get to that scale mindset, it's a scale mindset and it turns me off completely. So I think, I'm attracted to people that give so many shits that those are the people that are worthy of my attention, because they give me theirs. So, and I think that's how brands need to be looking at things going forward, which does pose a problem when you've got 30 million customers, or whatever it is you've got. But there is becoming more of a divide, definitely more of a divide. And those people that are focusing more attention on the ground and spending time creating those personalized experiences, if brands have to hire hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, or however that looks, then people are saying bots are going to take over. Well, if you actually give a crap about the people that are interacting with your brand, then make sure there's enough people on that ground level talking to people, rather than just people at the top making decisions and saying, let's scale and do this. Yeah, it does. And it's interesting as well, like my shopping. So I will buy from different brands. So I might buy an item of clothing from, let's take ASOS, for example, not because I've seen it on ASOS's channels, but because I've seen somebody else wearing it and talking about it. So rather than ASOS promoting it, it's because I've made a relationship with somebody who's chatting away. I've perhaps seen their kids, I've seen where they've gone to on holiday, I've seen them, in their natural environment, and they happen to be wearing a piece of ASOS clothing, rather than ASOS themselves.
Is that online or offline?
Online. Yeah, online. Yeah.
Just throwing that back out, does anyone have any suggestions of brands or people that you think are doing it well? So you buy into it, right?
And there's a story. there's a story behind it, and this is what I was saying before about starting with that, like that physical, and that going into that much level of detail is important, because I think very often brands start with, here's a product, let's do this amazing campaign because we want to sell X amount of this product. That's fine, but if you want to get that loyalty beyond reason, where you're a phone provider or you're whoever you are and you're selling whatever you are, and you want that loyalty from someone going from your company to the next company, there has to be something that goes deeper than just let's create a campaign that's going to attract you because I'm selling X product and we've created a really quirky video. That's not enough. It has to go deeper, and there has to be a story, because then next time, I don't care what product you're bringing out, I'm going to buy it because I love you.
Any other questions? Oh, one from Chris. Thanks, Matt.
Good hustle, man. Question for Andrew and Pete. You guys talk about acquiring customers and having them, in different stages of the funnel. One thing that a lot of people seem to think about social media is that it's all free, right? All this interaction, all the access that we have to brands or people is free. So how do you guys attack that challenge? How do you get people to move from interacting with you on a free basis to interacting with you on a paid basis?
That's a great question. So people, no matter how much information you give away for free, people will always buy from you because they always want more. They'll always pay for that access to you. They'll always pay for structure. They'll pay for exclusivity, community, ad-free content. They'll pay for all that kind of stuff. So a lot of people say, like, they're worried about giving away all that free information. Don't worry, give as much amazing free information as you can. But then taking them from free social content to paid for content, we see a lot of people like on either side of this. So some people will just give away like loads and loads of free content, and they'll just be like, there you go, and they're kind of scared to make the sale or ask for a sale, and they just hope that by pushing it out there, it's all going to come back to them in karma, and they're eventually going to get the sale. It's not necessarily the case. On the flip side, you got the people that are like, sale, sale, sale. They're not going to win either because it's not building that loyalty and trust first. So we say you need a mix of both, right? So you need that, what we call primary content, primary rich content to help build that equity, build the loyalty, build the trust with people. And then you need secondary content to kind of draw them in. And specifically with the secondary content, you need to know on social, it's really hard to just like sell something unless you've got a book or an event, in which case if you say, hey, I'm selling to you, like buy my book or buy this event, like people seem to love that and they congratulate you for selling to them, which I always found amazing. Like, here's my e-course. Congratulations, guys. That doesn't happen. But with an event or a book, it does, which is cool. But it's hard to sell, right? So what you need is what we call hand-raising content. So who in your audience is at that point in their buyer cycle where they're actually ready to buy? Because otherwise, you don't know who to follow up with. You don't know who to have those close, personal, meaningful relationships and connections with. You don't know who to send a Bonjoro video to. You don't know who to spend your time with. You might just be spending your time with tire kickers who are never going to buy. So we call it hand-raiser content, and hand-raiser content is gated in some way. So for example, they will click a link in your emails. They will go on a specific page on your website. They will go read your FAQs. They will watch a certain proportion of your social videos on Facebook or YouTube. They will use a contact form. They will download a price brochure. And on social, it's things like clicking links. It's things like sending you the private DMs. It's things like watching a certain proportion of that trailer that you posted or that behind-the-scenes video you posted. And all of this kind of content, because it's been gated, you can follow up with those people, right? So if someone watches, if we post a trailer on Facebook and someone watches it to 50%, like they've not accidentally watched 50% of our sales video. they're watching it because they're interested, they're curious, they want to know, like, what is Atomic all about? Why is everyone raving about it? So now we can retarget to the people that have watched that video. All of a sudden, we have someone to follow up with, someone to have more conversations with, people interacting with our bot. We can literally segment them. If they click on a price guide in our bot, we know to jump in and have that more meaningful conversation with them. And this is where social leads to more sales. And that's a really, that's a crucial element too. But it's going back to conversational marketing a lot of the time, which was mentioned today. The idea of bots and the scalability, it's not necessarily to automate and get rid of everything. It's to qualify people and start conversations with the right people. So like when people are interacting with our bot, it's not about, the purpose isn't for us to never talk to anyone again and just automate it. The purpose is to find out who's interested. Like I don't want to go to if I could go to a shop and I saw some nice jeans that I liked, but I didn't like the color, rather than having to talk to a human, like, those annoying salespeople, hi, can I help you? So, go away. I'm okay. I've been in a shop before. Like, I don't need help. But if there was a screen that said, like, find it in this color, I would much rather press that. And then if there was an actual issue, I could talk to someone. And it's the same with the bot. It's like, I'd rather talk to a machine up until the point where I need to talk to a person. And people want to self-serve and get that instant answer. So that's how we take social to customer in a very short, concise way.
Thank you,
In
Pete.
30 seconds.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll talk no more.
Thank you. Not thank you for not talking. You know what I meant. Okay, we are out of time. So,
Macro.
yeah.
Mackerel.
Oh yeah.
Mackerel.
Oh, mackerel. That's a thing, apparently. Right.
Who won?
Please give it up for our panel.